I never expected to find the letter that would unravel my entire marriage while cleaning out my mother's old cedar chest. The musty smell of aged wood and mothballs filled my nose as I lifted the worn envelope. My mother's elegant handwriting still crisp after all these years. My name is Lila, and after 32 years of marriage, I thought I knew everything about my husband Graham. I was wrong. Are you still messing with that old junk? Graham's voice carried from downstairs, tinged with that familiar note of impatience he developed over the years. The realtor will be here in an hour. Just finishing up, I called back, my fingers trembling as I opened the envelope. The paper was thin, delicate, dated just weeks before my wedding. My parents had always been polite to Graham, but something in their eyes never quite matched their smiles. Now I knew why. Dearest Lila, the letter began. There are things about Graham that worry your father and me. Things we've discovered that you need to know. Mom, my son Caleb's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway, looking so much like his father did at that age it almost hurt. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I quickly folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. Just found some old memories, honey. Dad's getting antsy about the realtor. Caleb's eyes narrowed slightly. You know, we don't have to sell the farm. I could help you keep it running. Before I could respond, Graham's footsteps thundered up the stairs. There you both are. The realtor just called. She's running early. His smile was bright, practiced. The same smile he'd used to convince me to leave the farm 30 years ago, only to return now to sell it after my parents' passing. Lila, darling, you really should change into something more presentable. I looked down at my worn jeans and flannel shirt, then back at him in his pressed khakis and designer polo. The distance between us had never felt greater. I'll dress how I please on my family's farm, I said quietly, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Graham's smile flickered for just a moment. Of course, dear. Whatever you think is best. But his eyes had that cold gleam I'd been seeing more often lately. Caleb cleared his throat. I'll head down and make some coffee for everyone. As his footsteps faded, Graham stepped closer, lowering his voice. We need this sale, Lila. You know that. His hand brushed my arm, but it felt more like a warning than affection. I touched the letter in my pocket, thinking of my parents' concerns buried in those pages. Do I asked. Do I really know anything anymore, Graham? His face hardened for a split second before smoothing back into that perfect mask. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. But standing there, watching my husband's carefully controlled expression, I knew things would never be the same. My parents had tried to warn me all those years ago. Now it was time to find out exactly what they knew. The realtor's visit went exactly as Graham wanted, quick, efficient, and ending with a promise to list the farm well above market value. I couldn't focus on any of it, though. My mother's letter burned in my pocket like a hot coal, and Graham's practiced charm felt more suffocating than ever. After the realtor left, I needed air. The old maple tree behind the barn had always been my thinking spot, but Graham's voice followed me even there. We should be celebrating, he called out, crossing the yard with 2 glasses of wine. This sale could set us up for life, Lila. I watched him approach, noticing how his expensive shoes sank slightly into the soft earth. He'd never gotten used to farm life, always treating it like something beneath him. I was thinking about Caleb, I said. Graham's smile tightened. What about him? He offered to help keep the farm running. Absolutely not. Graham set the wine glasses down harder than necessary on the old picnic table. He has a career in tech. He doesn't need to throw that away playing farmer. Like I threw away my life playing farmer? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Graham's face did that thing where it completely smoothed over, like drawing curtains across a window. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I gave you a better life in the city. Gave me? I stood up straighter. I left everything I knew for you, Graham. My family, my home. And look how well that turned out. He gestured broadly at his designer clothes. We have a beautiful house, social connections, everything we could want. Everything you could want, I corrected quietly. Before he could respond, Caleb's voice carried across the yard. Mom? Dad? You might want to see this. We found Caleb in the barn, holding an old leather briefcase. My heart stopped. I recognized it as my father's. Found this tucked away in the hayloft, Caleb said, brushing off dust. Looks like Grandpa kept some interesting records. Graham stepped forward. That's private family business. My family's business, I interrupted, taking the briefcase from Caleb. And since we're selling the farm, I should probably know exactly what's in here. Graham's hand shot out, gripping my arm. Lila, there's no need to dig up ancient history. What's done is done. I looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. Something in my expression made him let go immediately. Dad, Caleb said, his voice carrying a warning note I'd never heard before. Maybe you should take a walk. Graham's mask slipped for just a second, showing something ugly underneath. Then he smiled, all charm again. Of course. You two enjoy your little treasure hunt. I need to make some calls anyway. As he walked away, Caleb turned to me. Mom, there's something else you should know. I've been doing some digging of my own, and Dad's been… Wait, I said, pulling out my mother's letter. First, I need you to read this. Then we'll open the briefcase together. Caleb took the letter, his expression growing darker as he read. When he finished, he looked up at me with my father's eyes. Mom, I think we need to stop the farm sale. Right now. Why? Because, he said grimly, I don't think Dad's planning to share the money with you at all. My hands trembled as I spread the contents of my father's briefcase across the kitchen table. Bank statements, old contracts, and a stack of letters painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. Caleb sat beside me, his laptop open, connecting decades-old paper trails to modern digital footprints. Look at this, he said, turning his screen toward me. Dad's been taking out loans against the farm for years. He forged your signature on at least 3 of them. The room spun slightly. That's impossible. I would have known. Would you? Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. He's always handled the finances. Said it was taking the burden off you, remember? A memory surfaced. Graham insisting I sign papers without reading them, always with that disarming smile. Just trust me, darling. Why stress yourself with these details? The kitchen door swung open, and Graham walked in, freezing when he saw the briefcase's contents spread across the table. For a split second, raw panic flashed across his face before his usual smooth mask slipped back into place. What's all this? He moved toward the table, but Caleb shifted subtly, blocking his path. Why don't you tell us about the loans, Dad? Caleb's voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. Or maybe about Uncle Eldon's offer? Graham's laugh sounded forced. What offer? I haven't spoken to Eldon in years. Really? I pulled out a letter dated just 2 weeks ago. Then why is he writing about your plans to take over his company? About how selling my family's farm would give you the capital you need? Lila, darling, you're misunderstanding. Don't. My voice shook, but not from fear. Don't you dare call me darling while you're standing there lying to my face. Graham's charm vanished like smoke.
Fine.
You want the truth? I'm suffocating here, playing happy family while watching opportunities slip away. Eldon's offering me everything I've worked for, and you're both trying to ruin it with your sentimental attachment to this worthless piece of land. Worthless. I stood up slowly. This farm put Caleb through college. It paid for your fancy cars and designer clothes. It's been in my family for 4 generations. And now it's going to set me free. His smile turned cruel. The papers are already signed, Lila. The sale goes through next week, and there's nothing you can do about it. Caleb stood up. Actually, there is. I've already contacted the bank about the fraudulent loans. And Uncle Eldon? He's very interested in hearing about your creative financing. Graham's face went white. You wouldn't dare. I'm your father. No. Caleb cut him off. You're the man who's been stealing from my mother for 30 years. Graham turned to me, desperation replacing his usual confidence. Lila, please. We can work this out. Everything I did was for us. Get out. The words came easily, decades of suppressed anger finally breaking free. Get out of my house, Graham. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. He opened his mouth to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving behind the echoing sound of his expensive shoes on my farmhouse floor. Caleb touched my shoulder. "Mom, are you okay?" I looked at my son, seeing my father's strength in his eyes. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." The morning after I kicked Graham out, I found myself staring at my reflection in the farmhouse bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. My phone buzzed for the 10th time, another message from Graham's lawyer. I ignored it. Downstairs, Caleb was already at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and his laptop. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much either. "You need to see this," he said without looking up. "I found something in Dad's email records." "Should I even ask how you got those?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Probably not." I sat down beside him, and he turned the screen toward me. The email chain showed correspondence between Graham and someone named Sky. Recent emails. Intimate emails. "There's more," Caleb said quietly. "She's 26. Works at Uncle Eldon's company. They've been seeing each other for months." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. I got up and walked to the window, watching the morning fog roll across the fields my grandfather had planted decades ago. "Mom," Caleb's voice was gentle. "There's something else. About the farm sale." The back door creaked open, cutting him off. Graham stood there, looking unusually disheveled in yesterday's clothes. "You shouldn't be here," I said, but he held up his hands in surrender. "Please, just listen. I can explain everything." "Explain what?" Caleb stood up. "The affair? The forged loans? Or maybe how you planned to transfer the farm sale money to an offshore account?" Graham's face went slack with shock. "How did you? I'm in tech, remember? The career you were so proud of me pursuing." Caleb's laugh was bitter. "Turns out those skills are pretty useful for exposing fraud." "It's not fraud," Graham snapped. "Everything I did was for this family." "Stop." My voice was quiet but firm. "Just stop lying, Graham. For once in your life, tell the truth." He looked between us, then something seemed to break. His shoulders sagged. "Fine. You want the truth? I'm broke. The debts, the gambling, it all caught up. Eldon offered me a way out, but I needed capital. The farm was my only option." "Our farm," I corrected. "My family's legacy." "A legacy of what?" "Dirt and hard work." His mask slipped completely, showing the contempt beneath. "I gave you civilization, culture. I made you somebody." "No," I said, moving to stand beside Caleb. "You made me smaller. Every year, every lie, every time you made me doubt myself, you were making me smaller to make yourself feel bigger." Graham's face hardened. "Well, it doesn't matter now. The sale contract is binding. In a week, this will all be over." Caleb smiled, and for the first time, I saw something of Graham in him, but sharper, more focused. "Actually, I already spoke to Uncle Eldon this morning. Interesting man. Very interested in hearing about your creative accounting at his company." The color drained from Graham's face. "You're bluffing." "Want to bet on that?" Caleb asked. "Seems risky, given your track record with gambling." Graham turned to me, desperate now. "Lila, please. We can work this out. Think about our life together." "I am," I said. "And I'm thinking about the life I want now, without you in it." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind him. The morning fog rolled in, carrying the scent of damp earth and new possibilities. "Mom," Caleb touched my arm. "Are you ready to hear the rest about the farm?" I nodded, feeling stronger than I had in years. "Yes." No more secrets. Eldon Whitaker's office felt like stepping into another century, all dark wood and leather, with a view of the city that made everything below look like toys. The old man himself sat behind an enormous desk, studying me with eyes that reminded me painfully of Graham's. "So," he said, "you're the farm girl who's been causing all this trouble." "I prefer rightful property owner," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Though I suspect you already knew that when you made your deal with Graham. Eldon's laugh was surprisingly warm.
Direct.
I like that. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Take a look. Inside were photos, Graham with Sky at expensive restaurants, on vacations, shopping for rings. The dates on them went back almost 2 years. Why are you showing me these? My fingers crumpled the edge of one photo. Because Graham's been playing us both. Eldon leaned forward. He promised Sky marriage, told her he was divorcing his cold, controlling wife. Used her position here to access sensitive information. Meanwhile, he told me he needed the farm money to expand the business, promised me loyalty if I helped him secure it. I thought of Graham's desperate face yesterday morning. But you never intended to give him the company, did you? Give my life's work to a man who betrays everyone who trusts him? Eldon scoffed. I needed proof of his true nature. Thanks to you and your son, I got it. My phone buzzed, another message from Graham. I ignored it. There's more, Eldon continued. Graham's gambling debts? They're to some very dangerous people. He's not just trying to steal your farm. He's running scared. A knock at the door interrupted us. A young woman entered, beautiful, nervous, and instantly recognizable from the photos. Uncle Eldon, Oh. Sky stopped short when she saw me. I'm sorry, I didn't. It's all right, I said, standing. I think we should talk. The next hour was brutal. Sky's story poured out. Graham's promises, the manipulation, the lies. She showed me texts where he claimed I was abusive, that I'd trapped him in a loveless marriage. I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I never knew. He seemed so sincere. He always does, I said softly.
My phone buzzed again.
This time, I looked. Graham. Meeting at the farm. 3 p.m. Last chance to fix this peacefully. Eldon watched me read it. You know it's a trap, right? He's desperate now. Dangerous. Good. I stood up, suddenly clear about what needed to happen. Because I'm done being afraid of Graham's games. Mrs. Whitaker, Sky said. What are you going to do? I looked between them. The Uncle Graham tried to deceive, the young woman he'd manipulated, and thought about my son at home, working to protect our legacy. I'm going to do what I should have done 30 years ago, I said. I'm going to show Graham exactly who he married. As I left Eldon's office, my phone buzzed one final time. Caleb. Mom, don't go to the farm alone. Graham's withdrawn everything from our accounts. All of it. I smiled grimly as I stepped into the elevator. Graham wanted to play his final hand? Fine. But this time I was holding all the cards. The farm looked different at sunset. Shadows stretched across the fields like reaching fingers as I pulled up to find Graham's expensive car already parked in front of the barn. Caleb's warning text flashed through my mind, but I pushed it aside. This needed to end. I found Graham in my father's old office, rifling through the desk drawers. Looking for something? My voice made him jump. Lila. He straightened, trying to summon his usual charm. I was hoping we could talk privately. About what? The money you stole? Your girlfriend? Or maybe the gambling debts? His smile faltered. I see Eldon's been talking. You can't trust him, Lila. He's trying to turn you against me. Like you tried to turn Sky against me? I pulled out my phone, showing him the photos. 30 years, Graham. 30 years of lies. Everything I did was for us. Stop. My voice cracked like a whip. No more lies. Where's the money? Something dark crossed his face. Safe. And it'll stay that way unless you sign these. He pulled out a stack of papers. Full ownership of the farm. Transferred to me. Sign, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. Like you took care of me all these years? I laughed, but it sounded hollow. I trusted you with everything, my home, my family's legacy, my life. And you never loved any of it, did you? I loved the potential. He stepped closer. This farm, your family name, they were stepping stones. We could have been so much more if you hadn't been so provincial. The word hit like a slap. All those years of him subtly mocking my background, making me feel small, rushed back. Sign the papers, Lila.
His voice softened.
Don't force me to do this the hard way. What's the hard way, Dad? We both turned to find Caleb in the doorway, holding a laptop. This isn't your concern, son, Graham said. Actually, it is. Caleb opened the laptop. See, while you were busy emptying accounts and meeting with Sky, I was following the money. Every transfer, every hidden account, every contact with your gambling friends. One click, and it all goes to the FBI. Graham's mask cracked completely. You're bluffing. Try me. Caleb's voice was steel. I'm my mother's son. We protect what's ours. Graham moved so fast I barely saw it. Suddenly he had my arm, twisting it behind my back. New deal, he snarled. Delete everything or... The sound of a shotgun cocking froze us all. Or what? Eldon stood in the other doorway, my father's old shotgun in his hands. Let her go, Graham. It's over. Uncle Eldon, please. Graham's voice turned desperate. We can work something out. Like you work things out with my company's accounts? Eldon's aim didn't waver. The police are already on their way. Your choice how they find you. Graham's grip tightened painfully. I could feel him trembling, cornered, and dangerous. In that moment, I saw him clearly for the first time. Not the charming man I married, but a coward who'd spent his life running from consequences. Graham, I said quietly, let go. Please don't make this worse. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Graham shoved me away, hard. I hit the desk as he bolted past Eldon, out into the gathering darkness. Caleb rushed to help me up. Mom, are you okay? I looked at my son, then at Eldon, still holding my father's shotgun. Outside, police sirens wailed in the distance. No, I said honestly. But I will be. 3 days after Graham ran, I found him waiting on my parents' graves. The morning fog hadn't lifted yet, making him look like a ghost among the headstones. Maybe that's all he'd ever been, a phantom of the man I thought I'd married. They were right about me, he said without turning around. Your parents. They saw through me from the start. Why are you here, Graham? He looked terrible unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. They found the offshore accounts. Frozen everything. Even Sky's gone. He laughed bitterly. Turns out she didn't want a penniless older man after all. Karma's funny that way. I need your help, Lila. He finally turned to face me. One last time. Sign over the farm, and I'll disappear forever. Clean slate for both of us. You really don't get it, do you? I stepped closer to my parents' graves, touching my mother's headstone. This was never about money. Then what? His voice cracked. What did you want from me? The truth. Just once. Something shifted in his eyes. That familiar calculation I'd missed for so many years. The truth is, I loved you. In my way. Your way being lies, manipulation, and theft. I gave you a better life. He stepped toward me, desperate now. You were nothing but a farm girl when I found you. I made you sophisticated, gave you culture. You made me ashamed. The words came out quiet but sharp. Of my family, my background, myself. Every compliment was really a criticism. Every gift came with strings. Lila, please. I already signed the papers, Graham. He froze. What papers? The ones transferring ownership of the farm. I smiled slightly. To Caleb. His face contorted. You can't. Already done. This morning. Along with evidence of your fraud sent to the FBI. He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You stupid. The click of a safety being released stopped him cold. Let go of my mother. Caleb's voice carried across the cemetery. He stood with Eldon and 2 police officers, all watching Graham carefully. Graham's grip loosened. Son, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Caleb moved closer, his aim steady. Mom taught me about legacy, about honor. You taught me what kind of man not to be. Graham looked between us, his mask crumbling completely. For the first time, I saw him clearly, small, desperate, empty. Officers, Eldon called out. This is the man I spoke to you about. As they approached, Graham turned to me one last time. I could have made you extraordinary. No, I said softly. I already was.
You just couldn't see it.
I watched them lead him away, his expensive shoes stumbling on the damp grass. Caleb lowered the gun and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You okay? I looked at my parents' graves, thinking of their letter, their warnings, their love. You know what? I really am. The morning fog began to lift, revealing the farm spread out below us, strong, enduring, free. Just like me. Let's go home, I said to my son. We have work to do. 1 year later, I stood in the newly renovated barn, watching Caleb explain our hydroponic farming system to a group of agricultural students. The old place had transformed, solar panels on the roof, computer stations next to traditional farming tools, and rows of indoor crops growing alongside our traditional fields. Mom, Caleb caught my eye from across the room. Want to tell them about the Heritage Wheat Project? I smiled, remembering my father's passion for sustainable farming. Actually, I think Eldon should handle that part. Eldon stepped forward from where he'd been quietly observing. The past year had changed him too. Working with us had given him something Graham never could: genuine family connection. The Heritage Wheat Program, he began, was Lila's idea, combining traditional farming knowledge with modern technology, just like this partnership. After the students left, Caleb found me in the office, my father's old office, now modernized but still holding his worn leather chair. Got something to show you, he said, setting his laptop down. Remember that tech startup I've been working with? Look who just invested. The screen showed a familiar name, Sky Martinez, now running her own investment firm. She wanted to make things right, Caleb explained. Said she learned about integrity the hard way. Haven't we all? I touched my mother's letter, now framed on the wall alongside our new business licenses. Heard from the prison today, Caleb said quietly. Dad's requesting visitation again. I looked out the window at our thriving fields. What did you tell them? Same as always, balls in your court, Mom. I thought about Graham, about revenge and justice and healing. Maybe someday, I said. But not today. We have more important things to focus on. Eldon knocked on the door frame. Speaking of focus, the Organic Certification Board is here, ready to show them what a modern family farm looks like. Family farm. The words meant something different now. Not just blood and history, but choice and growth. The legacy my parents wanted to protect had evolved into something they never could have imagined, but would have loved. Before we go, Caleb said, there's one more thing. He pulled out an envelope, not unlike the one that started all this. The bank approved our loan to buy the Peterson place next door. We can expand the sustainable farming program. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. Not just paper, but possibility. Your grandfather always said that land was meant to grow more than just crops. He was right, Caleb smiled. It grows strength too. As we walked out to meet the certification board, I caught my reflection in a window. I saw what Graham never could, not just a farm girl or a sophisticated city wife, but a woman who'd finally grown into herself, roots and all. You know, Eldon said as we crossed the yard, Graham once told me you'd never understand real business. I laughed, watching our employees, young farmers and tech experts working side by side, tend to both ancient soil and modern innovation. Graham never understood that the best business isn't about taking, I said. It's about growing something larger than yourself. The afternoon sun caught the solar panels, making them shine like beacons. Below them, my family's wheat swayed in the breeze, strong and free. Just like me.